Eugene Jenkins' eyes widen as he notices the Yadaran female's gaze fixate on his lower body. The alien diplomat's large, almond-shaped eyes dart away quickly, but not before Eugene catches a glimpse of unmistakable curiosity mixed with confusion. The 28-year-old human astronaut takes a deep breath, acutely aware of the weight of responsibility resting on his shoulders. Earth's fate hangs in the balance, dependent on the success of this diplomatic mission to the Yadaran space station. The massive structure of gleaming metal and pulsating energy fields looms around him, a neutral meeting ground between humans and the technologically advanced Yadarans. As Eugene steps out of the airlock, the station's artificial gravity takes hold. He straightens his posture, conscious of every movement in his tight-fitting spacesuit. The Yadaran greeting party stands before him, led by Aurora, a stunningly beautiful alien with iridescent blue skin and a slender form. "Welcome, Eugene Jenkins of Earth," Aurora says, her voice melodious yet tinged with an otherworldly quality. "We are honored to host your delegation." Eugene nods, attempting to maintain a professional demeanor despite the growing tension in the air. The Yadarans, a species with no external genitalia, have long been perplexed by certain aspects of human anatomy. This cultural and biological gap now threatens to derail the crucial alliance against an impending threat from a hostile alien race. As the delegation moves through the station's corridors, Eugene's mind races, searching for ways to bridge the divide. The sleek, curved walls pulse with an ethereal light, casting an otherworldly glow on the assembled diplomats. Suddenly, his foot catches on an uneven floor panel. Eugene stumbles, his body pitching forward. Time seems to slow as he regains his balance. The spacesuit stretches across his groin, accentuating the distinct bulge of his human anatomy. Aurora's eyes widen in shock, her composure crumbling at the sight of something entirely foreign to Yadaran physiology. I must excuse myself," Aurora stammers, her usual grace abandoning her as she hurriedly retreats down a side corridor. The remaining Yadarans exchange worried glances, their discomfort palpable. Eugene's fellow human diplomats shift uneasily, aware that this incident could jeopardize everything they've worked towards. As news of the encounter spreads through the station like wildfire, other Yadarans begin to regard the humans with a mixture of fascination and apprehension. The atmosphere grows thick with unease, permeating every corner of the facility. The leader of the human delegation pulls Eugene aside, his expression grave. "Jenkins, the success of our mission now rests on you," he says in a low voice. "You need to find a way to overcome their shock and establish a rapport with Aurora. She holds significant influence among her people." Eugene nods, the weight of two worlds settling on his shoulders. He knows he must navigate this unexpected complication with diplomacy and understanding. The fate of Earth depends on his ability to bridge the gap between human and Yadaran biology, while maintaining the dignity and respect necessary for successful relations. As he sets off in search of Aurora, Eugene steels himself for the challenge ahead. The future of humanity rests on his ability to turn this moment of alien confusion into a foundation for lasting alliance. With each step, he silently vows to find a way to unite their species against the looming threat, no matter the personal cost. Eugene's heart raced as he set off through the station's winding corridors in search of Aurora. The weight of his mission pressed down on him with each step, the sleek metal walls seeming to close in around him. He found himself in an unfamiliar section of the station, surrounded by lush greenery and the soft sound of trickling water. The botanical garden spread out before him, a vibrant oasis amidst the sterile environment of the space station. Exotic plants from both Earth and Yadera intertwined, creating a mesmerizing tapestry of colors and textures. As Eugene's eyes adjusted to the change in lighting, he spotted Aurora kneeling beside a cluster of iridescent flowers, her blue skin shimmering in the garden's soft glow. "Aurora," Eugene called out softly, not wanting to startle her. Despite his efforts, Aurora flinched at the sound of his voice, her large eyes widening as she turned to face him. "Eugene," she replied, her melodious voice tinged with uncertainty. I apologize for my abrupt departure earlier." Eugene took a deep breath, steeling himself for the conversation ahead. "There's no need to apologize," he said, taking a cautious step forward. I think it's time we address the elephant in the room. Aurora's brow furrowed in confusion. Elephant? I'm not familiar with this term. It's an Earth expression, Eugene explained, a small smile tugging at his lips. It means we need to discuss the obvious issue we've been avoiding. Understanding dawned on Aurora's face, followed quickly by a flush of embarrassment that turned her cheeks a deeper shade of blue. You mean your anatomy? Eugene nodded, his expression serious. I believe our physiological differences have caused some misunderstandings. If we're going to form a successful alliance, we need to bridge this gap in knowledge. Aurora hesitated for a moment before nodding in agreement. You're right. Our lack of understanding has created unnecessary tension. How do you propose we address this? I think it would be helpful if we visited the medical bay, Eugene suggested. Dr. Chen, our physician, can provide a more detailed explanation of human biology. Would you be comfortable with that? Aurora considered the proposal, her fingers absently tracing the petals of a nearby flower. Yes, she said finally. I believe that would be beneficial. As they made their way to the medical bay, Eugene couldn't help but notice the curious glances from passing Yatarans. The station's corridors seemed to buzz with whispered conversations and speculation. He quickened his pace, eager to reach the relative privacy of the medical facility. Dr. Lydia Chen greeted them as they entered the pristine white room. The human physician's calm demeanor helped ease some of the tension that had built up during their walk. Ambassador Aurora, it's a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Chen said, extending her hand in greeting. Aurora hesitated for a moment before mimicking the gesture, her slender fingers wrapping around Dr. Chen's hand. The pleasure is mine, Doctor. I appreciate your willingness to educate me on human physiology. Dr. Chen nodded, her expression professional yet kind. Of course. Understanding each other's biology is crucial for fostering positive relations between our species. She turned to a nearby console, tapping a few commands. A three-dimensional holographic display sprang to life in the center of the room, showing a detailed image of the human body. As Dr. Chen began her explanation, Eugene watched Aurora's face carefully. The Yataran diplomat's initial discomfort gave way to fascination as she learned about the intricacies of human reproductive biology. Her large eyes widened with each new piece of information, occasionally darting between the holographic display and Eugene. Fascinating, Aurora murmured, leaning in to examine a close-up view of human reproductive organs. The complexity of your species' biology is remarkable. I can see now why our initial reaction may have seemed extreme. Eugene felt a wave of relief wash over him. I'm glad we could clear up any misunderstandings, he said, offering Aurora a warm smile. Just as Dr. Chen was about to delve into the specifics of human hormonal cycles, a piercing alarm shattered the calm atmosphere of the medical bay. Red warning lights began to flash, bathing the room in an eerie glow. What's happening? Eugene shouted over the blaring siren, instinctively moving closer to Aurora. Before anyone could respond, the medical bay's doors slid open with a hiss. Captain Zorax, the imposing Yataran security chief, burst into the room, his usually stoic face etched with concern. We have a critical situation, Zorax announced, his deep voice cutting through the alarm's wail. A rogue faction of Yatarans has seized control of the station's main control room. They're demanding that all humans be immediately expelled from the station, or they'll expose us to the vacuum of space. Eugene's blood ran cold as the implications of Zorax's words sank in. He exchanged a worried glance with Dr. Chen before turning to Aurora, whose blue skin had paled considerably. We need to act fast, Eugene said, his mind racing to formulate a plan. Aurora, is there any way we can regain control of the station's systems from here? Aurora shook her head, her voice trembling slightly. The medical bay's access is limited. We're essentially trapped here until the lockdown is lifted. As if on cue, the medical bay's doors sealed shut with a resounding thud, the locking mechanism engaging with a series of metallic clicks. Eugene's gaze darted around the room, taking in the advanced medical equipment surrounding them. An idea began to form in his mind, a daring plan that could potentially save them all. Wait, he said, turning to face Aurora and Dr. Chen. What if we could use our knowledge of human physiology, combined with Yataran technology, to outsmart the rogue faction? Aurora's eyes widened with interest. "What do you have in mind, Eugene?" As Eugene began to outline his plan, the tension in the room shifted. The initial awkwardness between human and Yadaran had transformed into a united front against a common threat. With time running out and the fate of both species hanging in the balance, Eugene, Aurora, and Dr. Chen huddled together, their differences forgotten as they worked to turn a moment of crisis into an opportunity for collaboration and understanding. Triumph. As they finalized the details of their plan, the sudden blare of alarms shattered their focus. The medical bay doors burst open with a thunderous crash, revealing a group of armed Yadarans led by a militant figure with piercing eyes. "Zexter," Aurora gasped, her voice barely audible over the wailing sirens. Eugene's heart raced as he quickly shoved their makeshift device under a nearby console. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her stance protective as she positioned herself between the intruders and her companions. Zextor's eyes narrowed as he surveyed the room. "What's going on here?" he demanded, his deep voice resonating with authority and suspicion. Before anyone could respond, Eugene doubled over, clutching his abdomen. He let out a convincing groan of pain, dropping to his knees on the cold metal floor. Dr. Chen immediately rushed to his side, her medical training kicking in despite knowing it was a ruse. "He needs immediate attention," Dr. Chen declared, her voice steady as she met Zextor's gaze. "It could be a reaction to the station's atmosphere." Aurora, catching on quickly, added, "We should call for Yadaran physiology experts. This could be crucial for understanding human biology and preventing further incidents." Zextor's team exchanged uncertain glances, clearly unprepared for this scenario. As they argued in hushed tones, Eugene caught Aurora's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. She understood, inching slowly towards the hidden device. Just as her fingers brushed the edge of the console, one of Zextor's subordinates turned, his eyes locking onto Aurora's movement. In a split second, she changed course, purposefully stumbling and using the motion to kick the device further under the console. "Watch yourself," the suspicious Yadaran growled, steadying Aurora with a firm grip on her arm. Zextor, growing visibly impatient, barked out an order. "Take the human to the main medical center. We'll sort this out there." As Zextor's team moved to lift Eugene, Dr. Chen interjected, "Wait, we need to bring specific equipment for human physiology." She hurriedly gathered various instruments, discreetly including their hybrid device among them. The journey through the station's corridors was tense. Eugene continued his act, letting out occasional groans of discomfort as they passed areas showing clear signs of conflict. Damaged panels sparked ominously, and makeshift barricades spoke of the ongoing struggle between the rogue faction and loyal Yadaran security forces. Upon entering the main medical center, Eugene's eyes widened at the sight of a charismatic Yadaran female standing amidst a flurry of activity. Her presence commanded attention, and her gaze bore into him with intense curiosity. "Vexalia," Aurora whispered, her voice tinged with a mix of respect and fear. Vexalia approached, her movements graceful yet predatory. "So, this is the human causing all the fuss," she mused, circling Eugene. Dr. Zenar examined him. "I want to know everything about his condition." As the Yadaran doctor approached, Eugene locked eyes with Aurora, silently communicating their plan. Aurora stepped forward, her voice ringing out with feigned indignation. "Dr. Zenar, with all due respect, what experience do you have with human physiology? This could be a critical situation requiring specialized knowledge." The diversion worked. As Vexalia and her guards turned their attention to the brewing argument, Dr. Chen seized the opportunity. With practiced efficiency, she connected their hybrid device to the medical center's central computer, disguising it as human-compatible diagnostic equipment. The device hummed to life, its interface blending seamlessly with the Yadaran technology. Eugene watched from the corner of his eye as it began to infiltrate the station's systems, granting them access to critical functions. Suddenly, alarms blared throughout the medical center, drowning out the heated debate. Vexalia's communicator crackled to life, relaying an urgent message that made her eyes widen in shock. "A human fleet has entered the system," she announced, her voice tight with tension. "They're demanding the release of their delegation." Her gaze snapped to Eugene, a mix of anger and calculation in her eyes. "You'll be useful after all, human. Take him to the command center." In the chaos that followed, Eugene found himself separated from Aurora and Dr. Chen. As Vex Alia's guards dragged him away, he caught one last glimpse of Aurora's determined face. Their eyes met, conveying a silent promise to see their plan through. The last thing Eugene saw before being pulled from the medical center was Aurora and Dr. Chen being locked in a secure room, their faces a mixture of fear and willpower. As he was marched through the station's winding corridors, Eugene's mind raced. The arrival of the human fleet had raised the stakes beyond anything he had anticipated. Now, with their groups separated and tensions at a breaking point, the fate of two species rested on their ability to complete their desperate plan. Eugene stumbled as his captors shoved him into a turbolift, his thoughts consumed by the enormity of the task ahead. As the doors hissed shut, he steeled himself for what was to come, knowing that every action, every word, could mean the difference between peace and interstellar war. Conflict. As the turbolift ascended, Eugene's mind raced, formulating a plan to turn this precarious situation to his advantage. The doors slid open, revealing a scene of controlled chaos. The command center bustled with activity as rogue Yatarans frantically worked at various consoles, their faces illuminated by the glow of holographic displays. At the center of it all stood Vexalia, her authoritative presence commanding the room. "Bring him here," she ordered, her eyes fixed on Eugene as the guards escorted him forward. Eugene stumbled slightly, partly from the rough handling and partly to maintain the illusion of his earlier condition. As he approached Vexalia, he scanned the room, taking in every detail. His gaze lingered for a moment on a familiar face among the insurgents. Zarkon, the Yataran scientist he recognized from the original diplomatic team. Vexalia's voice cut through his observations. "Human, you will contact your fleet and order them to stand down immediately." Eugene met her gaze steadily. "And if I refuse?" A cold smile played across Vexalia's features. "Then we'll see how well humans survive in the vacuum of space." Weighing his options, Eugene nodded slowly. "Very well, I'll make contact." As Vexalia led him to the communications console, Eugene's mind whirled with possibilities. He needed to alert the fleet to the situation without tipping off Vexalia. As he prepared to initiate contact, he caught Zarkon watching him with an unreadable expression. The main view screen flickered to life, revealing the stern visage of Admiral Helena Reeves. Her eyes widened almost imperceptibly at the sight of Eugene. "This is Admiral Reeves of the human fleet. We demand the immediate release of our delegation and—" Eugene cut her off, his voice steady. "Admiral, this is Eugene Novak. I assure you, there's been a misunderstanding. The situation here is complex." He emphasized the last word, hoping she would pick up on his meaning. Vexalia stepped forward, her patience clearly wearing thin. "Enough pleasantries. Tell them to withdraw their ships or we'll open fire." Eugene nodded, turning back to the screen. "Admiral, I strongly advise against any aggressive action. The station's defenses are formidable." He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Perhaps we could discuss this further. After all, clarity often comes from continued dialogue." Admiral Reeves's eyes narrowed slightly, and Eugene saw a flicker of understanding across her face. "I see. We'll need time to consider our options. We'll maintain our position for now." As the transmission ended, Eugene breathed an internal sigh of relief. His coded message seemed to have bought them some time. Vexalia rounded on him, suspicion evident in her gaze. "What game are you playing, human?" Before Eugene could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. Consoles flickered, and the lighting system went haywire. Vexalia barked orders at her subordinates, trying to regain control of the situation. In the ensuing chaos, Eugene seized his chance. He turned to Zarkon, who stood nearby, looking confused and alarmed. "Zarkon, listen to me. This conflict is based on a misunderstanding. Let me explain about human biology. It's crucial to resolving this peacefully." Zarkon hesitated, his curiosity clearly piqued. As Eugene launched into an impromptu lecture on human reproduction, He noticed other Yatarans, including some of Vexalia's advisors, listening with growing interest. "You see," Eugene continued, his voice rising above the cacophony of alarms, "human reproduction is fundamentally different from Yataran." His words were cut short as the command center doors burst open. Aurora, Dr. Chen, and a team of armed Yatarans led by Captain Zorax stormed in. In the blink of an eye, the room erupted into chaos. Eugene dove for cover as energy weapons discharged around him. He caught sight of Aurora wielding what looked like their hybrid device, her fingers flying over its interface. Suddenly, the weapons systems console went dark, and a triumphant smile flashed across Aurora's face. Taking advantage of the confusion, Eugene lunged towards Vexalia, who was shouting orders to her dwindling forces. He tackled her, sending them both crashing to the floor. They grappled briefly before Eugene managed to pin her arms. "It's over, Vexalia," he panted. "Stand down." For a moment it seemed as though she might comply. Then with a sudden burst of strength, she kicked Eugene off and scrambled to her feet. Before anyone could react, she and a handful of her most loyal followers disappeared through a side exit. As Captain Zorax's team secured the command center, Eugene found himself face-to-face with Aurora. Her eyes shone with a mixture of relief and something else, something that made his heart race. "You're all right," she breathed, reaching out to touch his arm. Eugene nodded, suddenly very aware of how close they were standing. "Thanks to you and your impeccable timing." Their moment was interrupted by Dr. Chen's urgent voice. "We need to go after Vexalia. She could still pose a threat to the station and the negotiations." Reality crashed back in as Eugene realized the gravity of their situation. Vexalia was still at large, likely planning her next move. The station's corridors offered countless hiding places and potential ambush points. "She's right," Eugene said, reluctantly stepping back from Aurora. "We need to end this once and for all." As they gathered their allies and prepared to pursue Vexalia into the depths of the station, Eugene couldn't help but feel that this chase would determine not only the fate of human-Yataran relations, but also the future of his growing connection with Aurora. With a shared nod of commitment, they set off into the labyrinthine corridors, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. With dedication etched on their faces, Eugene and Aurora took point, leading their makeshift team through the station's winding corridors. As they moved, Eugene activated the hybrid device, its screen flickering to life with a holographic display of the station's layout. "She's heading for the maintenance tunnels," he said, his voice low and urgent. "We can cut her off if we move quickly." Aurora nodded, her eyes scanning the dimly lit passageway ahead. "Those tunnels are a maze. We'll need to be careful. Vexalia likely knows them better than we do." The group pressed on, their footsteps echoing in the narrow confines of the station's infrastructure. The air grew thick and humid as they descended into the lower levels, the hum of machinery growing louder with each step. Suddenly, the hybrid device emitted a soft beep. Eugene halted, holding up a hand to signal the others. "Wait," he whispered, studying the display. "She's setting up traps. We need to proceed with caution." As if on cue, a series of small explosions rocked the tunnel ahead, sending debris raining down. Eugene instinctively reached out, pulling Aurora close to shield her from the falling metal. For a moment, they stood pressed together, their hearts racing in unison. "Thanks," Aurora breathed, her eyes meeting Eugene's. The closeness sent a jolt of electricity through them both, but there was no time to dwell on it. They navigated the obstacle course of fallen beams and sparking wires. Their progress slowed, but purpose undiminished. The chase led them deeper into the station's bowels, the air growing thinner and the passages more claustrophobic. After what felt like hours of pursuit, they emerged into a vast chamber that took their breath away. The station's power core loomed before them, a massive antimatter reactor pulsing with barely suppressed energy. "There!" Aurora pointed to a group of figures huddled near the reactor's control panel. Vexalia stood at the center, her posture rigid with defiance. As Eugene and the team approached, Vexalia's voice rang out, cold and unyielding. "Not another step, or I'll overload the reactor. This entire station will be vaporized." Eugene raised his hands, his mind racing. "Vexalia, think about what you're doing. This won't solve anything." Her laugh was bitter. "It will solve everything. No more humans, no more misguided attempts at cooperation. We'll be free to chart our own course. There has to be another way, Eugene pleaded, his eyes darting between Vex'ahlia and the reactor. We can talk about this. But Vex'ahlia was unmoved. She held up a small device, a dead man's switch. The time for talk is over. Meet our demands, or we all die together. Eugene's mind whirled, assessing their options. The standoff couldn't last forever, and every moment increased the risk of catastrophe. He leaned close to Aurora, whispering, "We need to get behind her. The external maintenance airlocks. Can we use them?" Aurora's eyes widened in understanding. "It's possible, but incredibly dangerous. We'd have to traverse the outer hull." "It's our only shot," Eugene replied. He turned to Captain Zorax. "Keep them talking. We're going to try something." With a nod to Aurora, they slipped away from the group, making their way to a nearby equipment locker. Inside, they found 2 spacesuits, their sleek design a testament to Yadaran engineering. As they donned the suits, Eugene couldn't help but notice how the form-fitting material clung to Aurora's curves. He pushed the thought aside, focusing on the task at hand. "Ready?" Aurora nodded, her face a mask of grit behind the suit's transparent faceplate. "Let's do this." They cycled through the airlock, emerging onto the station's outer hull. The void of space stretched before them, a sea of stars punctuated by the looming presence of nearby planets. Eugene felt a momentary wave of vertigo before the suit's magnetic boots engaged, anchoring him to the hull. "This way," Aurora's voice crackled through the comm. She pointed to a maintenance hatch a few hundred meters away. "That should lead us directly into the power core chamber." They began their perilous journey, each step carefully measured. The curvature of the station made the going treacherous, and more than once Eugene felt his foot slip. Aurora's hand shot out, steadying him. "I've got you," she said, her grip firm even through the bulky gloves of the spacesuit. As they neared the hatch, a stray piece of debris from an earlier firefight drifted past, clipping Eugene's helmet. He spun, his tether to the hull stretching to its limit. For a heart-stopping moment, he thought he would be flung into space. Then Aurora was there, her arms wrapping around him, using her suit's thrusters to stabilize them both. They clung to each other, their bodies pressed close as they slowly rotated back towards the hull. "That was too close," Eugene gasped, his heart pounding. "Don't scare me like that again," Aurora replied, her voice tight with emotion. They remained embraced for a moment longer than necessary, both acutely aware of their proximity despite the bulky suits. Then with a shared nod, they continued their mission. The maintenance hatch yielded to Aurora's expert touch, and they slipped inside, repressurizing in a small airlock, before entering the power core chamber. They found themselves on a catwalk above the main floor, with a perfect view of the standoff below. Vex'ahlia was growing increasingly agitated, her finger hovering over the dead man's switch. "Your time is running out," she snarled at the assembled group. Eugene caught Zarkon's eye, seeing a flicker of uncertainty in the Yadaran scientist's expression. It was now or never. He nodded to Aurora, who activated a small device on her wrist. A barely perceptible pulse rippled through the chamber, and suddenly the insurgents' weapons went dead. The dead man's switch in Vex'ahlia's hand sparked and died. In the moment of confusion that followed, Eugene vaulted over the catwalk railing, using his suit's thrusters to control his descent. He collided with Vex'ahlia, sending them both sprawling across the floor. They grappled fiercely, Eugene struggling to pin Vex'ahlia's arms. She fought with the strength of desperation, her elbow catching him in the ribs. But Eugene's human physiology, honed by years of training, gave him the edge. Finally, he managed to subdue her, holding her arms behind her back, as Captain Zorax's security team rushed in to take control. As the adrenaline of the moment faded, Eugene became aware of Aurora kneeling beside him, her hand on his shoulder. "Are you all right?" she asked, concern evident in her voice. He nodded, breathing heavily. "Never better." Their eyes met, and in that moment, the tension that had been building between them reached a crescendo. Without thinking, Eugene leaned forward, his lips meeting Aurora's in a passionate kiss. The world seemed to fall away as they embraced, the differences in their physiologies now a source of fascination rather than discomfort. When they finally parted, both were slightly breathless. "I've been wanting to do that for a while," Eugene admitted, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. Aurora's eyes sparkled with amusement and affection. What took you so long? Their moment was interrupted by the arrival of Ambassador Hawthorne, flanked by a contingent of human and Yadaran officials. The ambassador's eyes widened as he took in the scene before him. It seems we have a lot to discuss, Hawthorne said, his gaze moving from the captured insurgents to Eugene and Aurora's close proximity. I believe it's time to resume our diplomatic talks, with some new perspectives, perhaps? As they made their way back to the station's main levels, Eugene and Aurora walked close together, their hands occasionally brushing. The crisis had been averted, but both sensed that their adventure was just the beginning. In fact, as they approached Aurora's quarters to discuss plans for future cultural exchange programs, Eugene couldn't shake the feeling that the most exciting part of their journey was just beginning. In fact, as they approached Aurora's quarters to discuss plans for future cultural exchange programs, Eugene couldn't shake the feeling that the most exciting part of their journey was just starting. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing Aurora's private sanctuary. Eugene stepped inside, his eyes taking in the eclectic mix of Yadaran art and newly acquired human artifacts that adorned the space. A large viewport dominated one wall, offering a breathtaking view of the starfield beyond. Aurora gestured towards a comfortable seating area. Please, make yourself at home, she said, her voice carrying a hint of nervousness that Eugene found endearing. As they settled onto the plush cushions, Eugene felt the air between them grow thick with unspoken tension. Their eyes met, and for a moment neither spoke. Aurora broke the silence. Eugene, I'm curious about something. She hesitated, her iridescent skin shimmering slightly. After all we've been through, and the medical explanations earlier, I find myself wondering more about human physiology. Eugene's pulse quickened. What would you like to know? Aurora's gaze dropped to her hands, then back to Eugene's face. I was hoping for a more hands-on demonstration. If you're comfortable with that, of course. Eugene swallowed hard, both nervous and exhilarated. I'd be happy to show you, he said, his voice low. They began slowly exploring the differences in their hands. Eugene marveled at the subtle luminescence of Aurora's skin, the way it seemed to pulse with life beneath his touch. Aurora, in turn, traced the lines on Eugene's palm, fascinated by the intricate patterns. As their exploration grew more intimate, Eugene carefully removed his uniform top. Aurora's eyes widened as she took in the expanse of his chest, so different from Yadaran anatomy. May I? She asked, her hand hovering just above his skin. Eugene nodded, guiding her hand to his chest. He shivered at her touch, watching in fascination as Aurora's skin began to glow more intensely, pulsing with a soft, mesmerizing light. That's amazing, Eugene breathed. Does that always happen when you're excited? Aurora nodded, a shy smile playing at her lips. It's a uniquely Yadaran trait. I've never seen it react quite like this before, though. Their exploration continued, each new discovery eliciting gasps of wonder and tentative touches. Eugene had just begun to remove his lower garments when a sharp beep from the communication panel shattered the moment. Ambassador Hawthorne's voice filled the room, tense and urgent. Eugene, Aurora, we need you in the main conference room immediately. A delegation from the Rizan's Empire has just arrived, demanding an audience. Eugene and Aurora exchanged alarmed glances. The Rizans were known throughout the galaxy for their aggressive expansion and technological superiority. Their sudden appearance could only mean trouble. We're on our way, Eugene responded, already reaching for his discarded uniform top. They dressed quickly, the intimate mood of moments ago replaced by a sense of impending crisis. As they hurried through the station's corridors, Eugene couldn't help but feel a pang of regret for the interrupted moment. We'll continue our cultural exchange later, Aurora whispered, squeezing his hand briefly before they entered the conference room. The scene that greeted them was tense. Ambassador Hawthorne and Captain Zorax stood facing a group of towering, multi-limbed beings. The Rizan's delegation exuded an aura of almost unchecked hostility. At the center of the alien group stood a being Eugene assumed must be their leader. its eyes set in a face of shifted planes and angles, fixed on Eugene with an unsettling intensity. Ambassador Hawthorne made the introductions. Eugene, Aurora, this is Rathkur, the Rizan's ambassador. Ambassador, these are two of our key personnel in human-Yadaran relations. Rathkur's voice was a grating rasp. So, these are the architects of your ill-advised alliance. How quaint. Its gaze lingered on Eugene, a mixture of curiosity and disgust evident in its alien features. As the negotiations began, it quickly became clear that the Rizans had no interest in diplomacy. Rathkur demanded that both humans and Yadarans submit to Rizan's authority, threatening dire consequences for non-compliance. Eugene noticed Rathkur's repeated glances in his direction. Leaning close to Aurora, he whispered, "They seem particularly interested in human biology. Maybe we can use that to our advantage." Aurora's eyes lit up with understanding. "A distraction," she murmured. "But how?" As Ambassador Hawthorne called for a brief recess, Eugene and Aurora huddled in a corner, quickly formulating a plan. When the talks resumed, they were ready. Mid-sentence, Eugene suddenly clutched his abdomen and collapsed to the floor, writhing in apparent agony. Aurora rushed to his side, calling for medical assistance with convincing panic in her voice. Dr. Chen, who had been briefed on the plan during the recess, hurried over. She began a theatrical examination of Eugene, emphasizing the complexity and unpredictability of human biology with every exclamation and furrowed brow. The Rizan's delegation reacted with visible unease. Rathkur demanded an explanation, its earlier arrogance replaced by uncertainty. Ambassador Hawthorne seized the opportunity. "As you can see," he began, his voice grave, "human physiology is highly volatile. We ourselves don't fully understand the biological weapons that might be unleashed if our people feel threatened." Rathkur's multiple limbs twitched in agitation. It conferred briefly with its subordinates, their alien language a series of clicks and whistles. Finally, Rathkur turned back to the assembled group. "We require time to reassess our position in light of this new information. We will withdraw to our ship and return once we have analyzed the situation more thoroughly." As the Rizans hastily retreated, Eugene climbed to his feet, exchanging triumphant glances with Aurora and the others. Their quick thinking had bought them valuable time, but they all knew this was only a temporary reprieve. Ambassador Hawthorne approached Eugene and Aurora, his expression a mix of relief and concern. "Excellent work, both of you, but we need to prepare for their return. I want you two to head to the research lab and start developing a more comprehensive strategy. Your unique understanding of both human and Yadaran biology could be the key to standing united against the Rizan's threat." As the conference room cleared out, Eugene and Aurora found themselves alone once more. The intensity of the situation had only heightened the attraction between them. "I suppose we'll have to postpone our personal cultural exchange," Eugene said, a wry smile on his face. Aurora's skin pulsed with a soft glow. "For now," she agreed, "but I look forward to continuing our research." With a shared look of understanding and anticipation, they headed towards the research lab, ready to face the challenges ahead. As they walked, Eugene couldn't help but feel that their growing bond might just be the salvation both their species needed in the face of the looming Rizan's threat. As Eugene and Aurora made their way to the research lab, the gravity of the situation greatly troubled on their minds. The Rizan's threat loomed over them, but so did the electric tension between their bodies, a constant reminder of their interrupted moment of intimacy. The lab's automatic doors slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a state-of-the-art facility filled with gleaming equipment and holographic displays. Eugene's eyes widened as he took in the advanced technology, a testament to the Yadaran's scientific prowess. "Impressive," he murmured, running his hand along a smooth metallic surface. Aurora nodded, her skin pulsing with a soft glow of pride. "Let's get to work. We need to find a way to counter the Rizan's superior technology." They dove into their research, poring over data streams and analyzing complex molecular structures. As they worked side by side, their bodies frequently brushed against each other in the confined space, sending shivers down their spines. Hours passed in a blur of intense focus and stolen glances. Suddenly, Aurora gasped, her skin flashing brightly with excitement. Eugene, look at this. He leaned in close, his breath warm on her neck as he examined the holographic display. Is that? Yes, Aurora confirmed, her voice trembling with anticipation. A unique combination of human pheromones and ytterine bioluminescence. The molecular structure suggests it could create a powerful sensory overload for Rizan's physiology. Eugene's eyes lit up with understanding. A non-lethal defense mechanism. Aurora? This is brilliant. They immediately set to work synthesizing the compound, their movements a carefully choreographed dance in the cramped lab space. Eugene's strong, calloused hands worked the delicate equipment with surprising grace, while Aurora's slender fingers manipulated holographic controls with practiced ease. As they neared completion of the synthesis, their hands brushed together more frequently, each touch sending sparks of electricity through their bodies. Aurora's skin glowed brighter with each contact, casting a soft, pulsating light over the lab. Just as they were about to finalize the compound, a piercing alarm shattered the focused silence of the lab. Ambassador Hawthorne's voice crackled over the intercom, urgent, intense. Attention, all personnel. The Rizans have returned with a larger fleet. Prepare for potential boarding attempts. This is not a drill. Eugene and Aurora exchanged a look of drive tinged with fear. They redoubled their efforts, knowing that their work could be the key to the station's survival. In their haste, Eugene's elbow caught a vial of the synthesized mixture. Time seemed to slow as the glass container tumbled through the air, shattering on the lab floor and releasing a cloud of shimmering particles. The effect was instantaneous and overwhelming. As the compound settled on their skin and was inhaled, Eugene and Aurora felt their mutual attraction amplify to an almost unbearable intensity. Eugene's heart raced, his skin tingling with heightened sensitivity. Aurora's bioluminescence flared brightly, pulsing in rhythm with her rapid heartbeat. Their eyes met, and for a moment the rest of the world faded away. Eugene found himself lost in the swirling depths of Aurora's alien eyes, while she marveled at the intricate patterns of his iris. A distant explosion jolted them back to reality. With Herculean effort, they tore their gazes apart and focused on the task at hand. "We need to salvage what we can," Eugene said, his voice husky and strained. Aurora nodded, unable to trust her own voice. They worked quickly, gathering the remaining compound into a dispersal device. As they finished, the lab door burst open, revealing a group of Rizan soldiers, their multi-limbed forms filling the doorway menacingly. Without hesitation, Eugene activated the device, releasing a cloud of the compound into the air. The effect on the Rizans was immediate and dramatic. The alien invaders stumbled, their movements becoming uncoordinated and erratic. Some clutched at their sensory organs, while others simply collapsed to the floor. Eugene and Aurora seized the opportunity, slipping past the incapacitated Rizans and into the corridor. They made their way towards the command center, their bodies hyper-aware of each other's presence. As they entered the command center, they found Ambassador Hawthorne and Captain Zorax coordinating the station's defense. The leaders turned to them, their expressions a mix of hope and confusion at the sight of Eugene's flushed face and Aurora's brightly glowing skin. "What happened?" Hawthorne demanded, his eyes darting between them. Eugene and Aurora explained their discovery and its effects, their words tumbling out in a rush. Despite their compromised state, the importance of their breakthrough was immediately apparent. Hawthorne's eyes gleamed with new hope. "This could change everything. We need to disperse this compound throughout the station immediately." As the station's engineers worked to adapt the environmental systems, Eugene and Aurora found themselves constantly drawn to each other. Their eyes met across the room, conveying volumes of unspoken desire. Every accidental touch as they assisted in coordinating the defense sent shockwaves through their bodies. Reports began flooding in of Rizan's boarding parties, becoming disoriented and easily subdued. The tide of the battle was turning. On the main view screen, they watched as the Rizan's fleet began to retreat, their coordinated attack falling into disarray. Hawthorne seized the moment, opening communications with the Rizan's command ship. As the immediate crisis subsided and negotiations began, Eugene and Aurora found themselves unable to resist their attraction any longer. They quietly excused themselves from the command center, ostensibly to check on the status of the laboratory. In the corridor, they ducked into a secluded maintenance alcove. Their eyes met, and without a word, they came together in a passionate embrace. Eugene marveled at the soft glow of Aurora's skin against his, while she reveled in the alien warmth of his body. Their moment of passion was interrupted by another station-wide announcement. The Rizans had agreed to a temporary ceasefire and were withdrawing from the system. Reluctantly, they separated, their breathing heavy and their bodies still thrumming with desire. They made their way back to the command center, arriving to find a celebration in full swing. Humans and Yatarans alike hailed them as heroes, unaware of the intimate moment they had just shared. As the celebration continued around them, Eugene and Aurora found themselves drawn to each other once more. Their eyes met across the crowded room, a silent understanding passing between them. Without a word, they slipped away from the festivities, heading towards Aurora's quarters. As they walked, their hands brushed against each other, sending jolts of electricity through their bodies. The compound's effects might have faded, but the attraction between them had only grown stronger. They reached Aurora's quarters, the door sliding open with a soft hiss. As they stepped inside, the rest of the station seemed to fade away. The door closed behind them, leaving them alone with their desires and the promise of a new chapter in human-Yataran relations. The anticipation that had been building between them since their first encounter was about to reach its crescendo. As the door slid shut behind them, Eugene and Aurora found themselves in a space that was uniquely Yataran. The ambient lighting in Aurora's quarters was soft and ethereal, casting a gentle glow that seemed to dance across the room's organic contours. The iridescent sheen of Aurora's skin pulsed with increasing intensity as Eugene drew closer, her bioluminescence responding to her heightened emotional state. Eugene's breath caught in his throat as he took in the sight of Aurora in this intimate setting. Her alien beauty was captivating, the play of light across her form creating a mesmerizing display. Aurora, in turn, was fascinated by the way the subdued lighting accentuated Eugene's strong jawline and the depth of his eyes. They stood for a moment, drinking in the sight of each other, before Eugene took a tentative step forward. His hand reached out, fingers trembling slightly as they made contact with Aurora's arm. The sensation was electric, sending a shiver through both of them. "I've been wanting to do this since I first saw you," Eugene murmured, his voice low and husky. Aurora's skin flushed with a deep pulsating blue. "As have I," she replied, her own voice carrying a musical quality that sent shivers down Eugene's spine. Their exploration began slowly, with gentle caresses and curious touches. Eugene guided Aurora's hands over his form, explaining the intricacies of human anatomy. He shivered as her cool, smooth fingers traced the lines of his muscles, lingering on the spots that made him gasp. "Here," he said, placing her hand over his heart. "This is where humans feel most deeply." Aurora marveled at the steady rhythm beneath her palm, her skin pulsing in sync with Eugene's heartbeat. In turn, she demonstrated the unique sensitivities of Yataran physiology. She guided Eugene's hand to the base of her neck, where a cluster of neural receptors sent waves of pleasure coursing through her body at his touch. As their caresses became more intimate, they discovered unexpected compatibilities between their species. The differences in their anatomy, once a source of confusion and embarrassment, now became a wellspring of mutual pleasure and fascination. Aurora's bioluminescence flared with each new sensation, bathing the room in a kaleidoscope of colors that shifted from deep purples to brilliant teals. Eugene found himself entranced by the way Aurora's skin changed hues beneath his touch. Each caress, each kiss left a trail of shimmering light that slowly faded, only to be replaced by new patterns as they continued their exploration. Aurora, for her part, was captivated by the warmth of Eugene's body, so different from her own cool skin. Their lovemaking was a blend of tender moments and passionate intensity, punctuated by gasps of surprise and murmurs of delight as they navigated the uncharted territory of interspecies intimacy. The lingering effects of the pheromone bioluminescence compound heightened their every sensation, creating an experience that transcended their wildest imaginations. As they moved together, Aurora's bioluminescence reached a fever pitch, filling the room with a dazzling light show that seemed to pulse in time with their shared pleasure. Eugene found himself lost in the swirling colors, feeling as though he was floating among the stars. In the afterglow of their encounter, Eugene and Aurora lay entwined, marveling at the journey that had brought them together. Eugene traced lazy patterns on Aurora's skin, watching with fascination as his touch left trails of softly glowing light. "I never imagined it could be like this," Aurora said softly, her voice filled with wonder. Eugene nodded, pulling her closer. "It's more than just physical," he replied. "I feel like I understand you, understand your people, in a way I never could have before." Their conversation drifted from personal reflections to the broader implications of their union. As they talked, they began to realize that their intimate understanding of each other's species could be the key to fostering deeper cooperation between humans and Yatarans. "Think about it," Eugene said, his eyes bright with excitement. "If we can bridge the gap between us so completely, imagine what our peoples could accomplish together." Aurora's skin pulsed with a warm golden light as she considered the idea. "You're right," she said. "Our differences aren't obstacles, they're opportunities. We could create a cultural exchange program unlike anything the galaxy has seen before." Inspired by this revelation, they began to formulate plans. Their ideas ranged from educational initiatives to collaborative scientific research, all aimed at bridging the gap between their peoples. They envisioned a future where humans and Yatarans worked side by side, their combined strengths making them a formidable force in the galaxy. As they talked, their hands continued to explore each other's bodies, their newfound intimacy lending weight to their words. They spoke of art exchanges, where human and Yataran artists could learn from each other's techniques. They discussed scientific collaborations that could push the boundaries of both their technologies. "We could even develop new medical treatments," Aurora said, her skin flickering with excitement. "Combining our physiologies could lead to breakthroughs we've never dreamed of." Eugene nodded enthusiastically. "And think of the diplomatic implications. If we can show the galaxy that two such different species can come together like this, it could change everything." As dawn broke on the space station, Eugene and Aurora reluctantly disentangled themselves. They showered and dressed, stealing glances and touches as they prepared to face the day. Despite the importance of their plans, neither could fully focus on the tasks ahead, their minds continually drifting back to the night they had shared. Hand in hand, they made their way to the command center, ready to present their ideas for the cultural exchange program to Ambassador Hawthorne and the Yataran leadership. As they walked, they drew curious glances from both humans and Yatarans they passed. There was something different about them, an ease and comfort in each other's presence that hadn't been there before. They paused outside the command center, sharing a look of understanding and anticipation. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. With a shared nod of grit, Eugene and Aurora stepped forward, ready to shape the future of human-Yataran relations, and perhaps the course of galactic history itself.
If you finished this story, please subscribe and like the video. Then leave a comment that says, "I liked the story," and I will heart every single one of them. It really helps me. Thank you for your time.